Breaking developments is Volodymyr Zelensky, the Ukrainian president, has spoken to Prime Minister Narendra Modi, and he says that I had a long conversation with Prime Minister of India, Narendra Modi. We discussed in detail all important issues, both of our bilateral cooperation and the overall diplomatic situation. I'm grateful to Prime Minister Modi for his warm words of support for our people. I informed about the Russian attacks on our cities. He talks about the yesterday's strike on the bus station in Zaporizhzhia, where dozens of people got injured as well. And Volodymyr Zelensky at this point in time again telling the Prime Minister that it is important that India is supporting our peace efforts and shares the position that everything concerning Ukraine must be decided with Ukraine's participation as well. Other formats will not deliver results, says Volodymyr Zelensky at this point in time. And Prime Minister Narendra Modi also reacting, taking to social media after this phone call with Volodymyr Zelensky. So much is happening in the region as well, as Putin is set to visit Prime Minister Modi here in India. Prime Minister Modi set to visit China and Xi Jinping at the end of this month as part of that SCO meeting. And of course, the geopolitical realignment vis-a-vis the Russian oil and its export and import. Prime Minister Modi takes to social media and says, glad to speak with President Zelensky and hear his perspectives on recent developments. I conveyed India's consistent position on the need for an early and peaceful resolution of the conflict. India remains committed to making every peaceful contribution, says Prime Minister Modi, in this regard, as well as to further strengthening bilateral ties with Ukraine. News 9's senior executive editor, Aditya Rajkol, with us here on the broadcast. Aditya, how does one read this particular phone call between Volodymyr Zelensky and Prime Minister Modi at a time of geopolitical realignment? Putin, Modi, Xi Jinping, the 200 million barrels and its supply. So much is happening on the global stage, and the onslaught of the Russian and Ukraine war. J.D. Vance was earlier saying that we want to have a meeting where Zelensky is also on the table. So what exactly is at play?
Well, definitely. It's a very important conversation between Prime Minister Narendra Modi and the Ukraine President Zelensky, clearly indicating the warmth and the close ties that India and Ukraine enjoy. In fact, Prime Minister Modi thanked President Zelensky and reaffirmed India's steadfast and consistent position for peaceful settlement of the conflict and support for efforts aimed at earliest restoration of peace. The Prime Minister has also reiterated India's commitment to extend all possible support in this regard. They also, in fact, discussed the India-Ukraine ties, and of course, how to take that forward. President Zelensky, in fact, shared with Prime Minister Modi his own views on the recent developments related to Ukraine that have happened. We know about the meeting also between Trump and Putin that is going to be held in Alaska. The Prime Minister, as I said, has reaffirmed India's consistent position for peaceful settlement of the conflict and support for efforts aimed at earliest restoration of the peace in the region. It's been 3 years of this conflict between Russia and Ukraine. For the last 6 months, Donald Trump, the U.S. president, has been trying to mediate. He has sent in mediators both to Ukraine as well as Russia. And now it does seem that there could be a possibility, a glimmer of hope, really. And in this midst, Prime Minister Modi and President Zelensky holding this important conversation on the conflict as a whole and also on the India-Ukraine ties. You would remember Prime Minister Modi's visit a few months ago to Ukraine that had attracted global attention. He is one of the only leaders all across the globe where he has good ties with Putin as well as Zelensky. And India, in the context of Russia and Ukraine, had said that this is not an era of war and solutions cannot be found in the battlefield. Important statements that have found resonation during the G20 summit that happened almost 2 years ago in New Delhi, and there was a consensus that was achieved during G20 as well that happened in New Delhi at the behest of the Modi government. So as of now, it's a very important conversation, diplomatically speaking. New Delhi pushing for peace efforts and diplomacy and dialogue to pay forward and not solutions that can be found in the battlefield.
Volodymyr Zelensky takes to social media, Aditya, and says, we also discussed in detail the sanctions against Russia. I noted that it is necessary to limit the export of Russian energy, particularly oil, to reduce its potential and ability to finance the continuation of this war. Quite interesting developments here, because seems to be towing the United States' line. It seems like this is a post by Donald Trump on Truth Social, not Volodymyr Zelensky. And like I mentioned, J.D. Vance saying before Prime Minister Narendra Modi and Putin meet, before the SCO meeting happens, it seems like Donald Trump wants to meet Putin And before that meeting happens, J.D. Vance says, we're trying for some way, in some way that Volodymyr Zelensky can come to the table as well. Is this Volodymyr Zelensky towing the U.S. line here?
No doubts about it. It is, Zelensky towing the U.S. line and also pushing for India to make a move against, the Russian oil or the trade that we have been continuing with Russia. But New Delhi and Prime Minister Modi and External Affairs Minister Jaishankar have made India's position very much clear that whatever decisions have been taken in the last 3 years or before that has been concerning the Indian people, concerning the national interest of India, and that's what will be priority for India. If the United States, if the Ukraine, or the Western countries, especially the European Union, can take a call that is in interest of their own people and or their own states, then why can't India? Just like India, there are several other states and countries that are indulging in gas bilateral trade with Russia. Why not stop that before lecturing India? That's been the new position of New Delhi from the very beginning. And these tactics of theatrics of bullying India or pushing India or putting sanctions against India are certainly not going to change the position of New Delhi in this diplomatic standoff that has continued. Zelensky, of course, talks about the Russian attacks in cities and villages, and about yesterday's strike at a bus station as well, where dozens of people were injured. He informed the Prime Minister that instead of demonstrating readiness for a ceasefire, Russia is showing only its desire to continue the occupation and killing, and how it is important for India to support peace efforts and share the position that everything concerning Ukraine must be decided with Ukraine's participation, and other formats will not deliver results. So certainly pushing New Delhi to also deliver a message to Russia and Putin.